Hey, welcome back, everyone. Now, we've all heard the saying that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. But for most of us, when we look ahead to all the things that could potentially go wrong, there seems to be very good reason for our fear. In other words, we're afraid of what might happen in the future. But what if I told you that this isn't the case? That our fears don't actually come from the future? Now, before we jump into it, if you're enjoying this content, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're new to the channel. It really helps me out. And drop a comment as well. Let me know what kind of content you would like to see. I just want to thank all of you who have taken the time to do so. Now, fear is a funny thing. Most of us, I think, hate admitting that we feel afraid. But on the other hand, if you're like me and you look back on your life, you'll probably realize that the most rewarding victories, the greatest successes, and your biggest breakthroughs all took place just on the other side of fear, as you broke out of your comfort zone and expanded beyond your perceived limitations. Now, I know this is definitely the case for me with YouTube. The first few videos I posted, I was sick to my stomach because I was afraid of rejection, of humiliation, afraid of what the people that I knew would think when they saw me talking about this information. But I realized that when I pushed past that fear, I found that I was improving with every video. And rather than feeling like a chore, pretty soon it became something that felt very satisfying and fulfilling. Like it just felt good. It felt right to share my message and speak my highest truth. And when I started to operate from this energy, the feedback and the support from other people became overwhelmingly positive. And so at the same time, however, it's forced me to look back at all of the missed opportunities in my life as well, all the times when I chose to run away from fear rather than deciding to embrace it and face it head on. Because the reality is most of us are driven and motivated almost entirely by fear. We spend our whole lives basically trying to avoid it. We accumulate money out of fear that there won't be enough. We prioritize success out of fear that will amount to nothing in the eyes of other people. We settle for a partner because we're afraid that we'll end up alone and dissatisfied. And interestingly, when it comes to career and business, many of us find ourselves kind of between a rock and a hard place, stuck between the fear of failure on one hand and the fear of success on the other hand. I know that this fear of success has been something that's really been highlighted for me over these past few months with my business. I realized that I had this fear that even if I was very successful in business, if I made a lot of money, that when I got to the top, I would lose everything, that it would all come crumbling down and I'd be left with nothing. And so I kind of found myself self-sabotaging in a lot of ways, avoiding action, avoiding moving forward, because I was afraid that if things went well, inevitably they would crumble and things would go very poorly. I would suffer. I would be left with nothing. And so I was very curious about this. I never really recognized it within myself before, and so I decided to go into a meditation just recently with the intention of, where did this fear come from? What's this trying to tell me? And what I saw was I was taken back to the time when my little sister was born. I was 3 at the time, and for any of you who have experienced this with a sibling, you'll know that when that sibling is born and you are the first child, all of a sudden, overnight, you go from being the center of the world, getting all of mom and dad, grandma, grandpa's love and affection and attention, to being second best, less important than your sibling. Your sibling needs all the attention and care. And so you go from having everything to having what feels like nothing. Obviously, mom and dad, they still love you and they're doing their very best. But to a little kid, it feels like you are losing everything that you once had, all of your desires and your needs for this other being who's now in your life. I remember when my sister was born, I was so hurt and so angry. I would walk down the store aisles with my mom, and you know how on diapers and baby products they always have the little picture of the baby, and I would walk down the aisle and I would poke the eyes out of all of the babies because I was so infuriated that this little baby took all the love and attention for me. But I realized that this is where that fear was coming from. It was something that I kept reliving from my past, that there was this time when I had everything. I had all the love I could ever want, and then it got taken away overnight. And so our fears come from the past, not the future. They're unhealed parts of ourselves. Fear is a defense mechanism. It's a protective measure that's there for our self-preservation. Our brain essentially is trying to keep us safe and avoid the feeling of pain and rejection that we felt somewhere in our deep past. And it does this by doing everything in its power to try to keep us away from the situations or the people that brought us that pain in the first place. So maybe we're afraid of things like public speaking so that we don't feel humiliation. Maybe we're afraid of relationships and other people so that we don't feel the pain of rejection, so that we don't feel unworthy and unlovable. So the brain, it takes the past and it projects it into the future. It creates this story where the future will always turn out like it does in the past, where it will always remember that worst case scenario so that it can plan for the future so that it doesn't get caught off guard, so that you won't be knocked off your feet when this horrible thing in the future happens again. And so to many of us, these beliefs about the past and the way the world is, they just feel true. Like, this is just the way things are. This is the way the world is. But if this were the case, if the past really did define the future, then change and transformation and personal growth wouldn't even be possible. Look back at all the ways that you've changed and grown in your life. Maybe you went from being sick to being healthy. This was my journey. This is what got me into this space, is from being very unwell to finding wellness and wholeness. Maybe for you, you were broke at one point, and you went from being broke to being financially stable and abundant, right? And so none of this would be possible if the future was determined by the past. And so fear is not an enemy. It's actually our friend. It's trying to help us. It's a messenger that's basically come from our past and traveled through time to illuminate all the areas within ourselves that need healing. It's an opportunity to change our perception of the past right now in the present, and to change the trajectory of the future by doing so. It is our path to freedom, if you want to look at it that way, because it highlights all the areas where we're not living in alignment with love, right? Where it illuminates all the places that we're living from a place of lack, limitation, shame, unworthiness, judgment, anger. And so I want you to start approaching your fears in this way, as a friend, as a teacher or an ally. So when you notice that fear comes up, maybe you're in a challenging situation where you get those nerves and that anxiety, I want you to engage in a conversation with your fear. Ask it, where'd you come from? What are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to protect me from? And just listen for an answer. It might come then, or it might come later on. It might come in a time of silence or meditation or prayer. But just be open to that answer, because you would be surprised at what comes up. There is always some deeper wound that lies at the core of our greatest fears. And when you can begin to heal these areas and heal these wounds, the fear, you'll find, will naturally dissolve, because there's no reason for the fear to be there anymore. And so instead of fighting your fear, repressing it, pushing it down, trying to change it or get rid of it or kill the ego, feel it, acknowledge it. It's like a friend. It just wants you to listen. It just wants to be heard. And so feel it, acknowledge it, and do that scary thing anyway. You feel the fear and do it anyways, because you need to feel it, and you need to show yourself that you are expanding beyond it. So often I think we're just told to put on our tough face and pretend that we're not afraid, push through. I know I did this for so much of my life, but you really can't repress fear and ignore it by pretending it isn't there. This doesn't work. It just creates more resistance that ensures that it's going to remain in our reality until we learn the lessons that fear is trying to teach us and level up our consciousness, we will always attract the things that we fear and judge until we learn to no longer fear and judge those things. Now, the cool thing is we don't have to wait for life to throw us lemons to become aware of our fears. We can choose to learn passively. We could certainly go that way and be a victim, wait for life to present us with undesirable, challenging circumstances. Or we can take proactive steps toward our own learning and evolution. And one of the best ways we can be proactive is through something called shadow work or inner child healing. You might have heard of it. And you're essentially rewriting the story of your past to change your entire outlook of the future. So you're beginning to see that the fear-based beliefs that you formed about yourself and about the world were never actually true. You can go back in time and really just give yourself, that little wounded child from your past, the love and the support and the care that maybe you felt you never fully received as a child. You are, in essence, reprogramming the subconscious mind so you don't need to attract all of these negative experiences and challenging people that will serve as a catalyst for your learning. And as I've healed the past, I've noticed that certain fears they go away. The things I thought I would always be afraid of, they aren't really scary anymore. And this doesn't mean I don't feel fear. I bump up against it every day. There are always deeper fears to explore, but when you heal the past, you are really changing your future. So if you want to experience this quantum shift for yourself, I have a free guided meditation down in the description below. So you can start to feel whole. You can start to feel lovable. You can feel worthy once again. Remember that you are an infinite, timeless being. Linear time doesn't exist from a higher perspective. It's just a way for the limited mind to experience and understand infinity. In reality, your entire story is all happening right now in one glorious moment of creation. Don't you remember? You wrote the story yourself so you can enter the game and experience its unfolding. And it's perfect. It always has been. It always will be. And when you choose to make a shift in your perception in this now moment, it has a ripple effect across time and across space. It changes your past, it changes the trajectory of your future, and most importantly, it changes your experience here and now, because this is the only place that we ever exist. Here and now, forever. So guys, thanks so much for joining me today. Leave a comment below. Let me know what your thoughts, your experience, your perspective is when it comes to fear. What challenges have you faced? What breakthroughs have you encountered? Let me know, and thanks for joining me. I'll see you guys next time.